Hello everyone and welcome to the Constructive Criticism Network. This network is here to help you improve at Magic the Gathering at every level. From Pauper Leagues to Top 1000 Mythic, we've got you covered. If you want to hear the entire network, head on over to our sponsor at puremtgo.com, where you can hear each and every show, each and every week, and check out their sponsor, MTGO Traders, and tell them that the CCMTG Network sent you. Now sit back, enjoy the show. From YouTube, podcasts, and more, here's this week's episode from ConstructiveCriticism.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 129 of the Common Knowledge Podcast. I'm your host, Chatterstorm, and I'm joined by our co-host, Brad.
Hello, everybody.
This week, we have a very special guest on the show to help us go through a handful of Modern Horizons 2 cards, as well as look at their immediate impact on Pauper. Who's our special guest tonight, Brad, if you want to introduce him?
I do. I would love to welcome the three-time Brazilian National Pauper Champion, English professor, MTGO League grinder, Twitch streamer, Alexandre Weber. How you doing today, buddy? Welcome to the show.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. I'm doing great. Actually, I got suddenly very nervous, but I'm very, very happy to be here with you guys tonight.
Yeah, no nerves. We're pretty casual. Don't need to worry about too much.
Yeah, we're super excited to have somebody like you on the show that we know is a good player, really nice, really active in the community. It's a pleasure to have you, for real.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. So let's talk about this new set.
Yeah.
But before we get too far into the episode, I just have to remind everyone that Common Knowledge and all of the podcasts on the Constructive Criticism Network are sponsored by puremtgo.com. If you'd like to support the show, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Common Knowledge YouTube channel and check out our Patreon. Now that we got that out of the way, let's get back on to talking about Modern Horizons.
All right.
Yeah, so the cards are actually already out and have been for a little bit now. So actually, Alexander got to play some of them in the challenge today. Did you notice any that stood out or anything?
Yeah, the things that stood out to me are the new affinity cards. You know, the affinity lanes are very strong because they make the deck really resilient, and the mana basis gets really better. Not only because it doesn't get destroyed by Gorilla Shaman or other destroy effects, but because it fixes without. It's an uncounterable way to fix the mana, because usually some decks with counters could maybe counter your Prophetic Prism or maybe your Navigator's Compass, and we don't have this anymore. And alongside with the new Mirror Enforcer 2.0, and and the new cards that make stop turns, I don't recall the name, but
Spinner, Ethereum Spinner, is that the one?
Yeah, this one. All of these cards made the Affinity a really strong deck for leagues and for challenge as well. And the other card that I saw on the challenge was the Shatterstorm, of course. And I actually faced three decks. I played against 3 Shatterstorm decks today, and the deck looks really explosive. But there's a small set of cards that can deal with the deck, like Dispel, Hydroblast, and maybe Crackler Shaman as well.
Excellent. Yeah, I know. I actually popped in one of your streams Friday, so that'd be yesterday. You were playing a new Affinity build, and then I think you posted it today on Twitter. I borrowed the screenshot of it for my own future decks, but yeah, with the new Mirror Enforcer 2.0 and the Ethereum Spinner. How did you end up finding room in that deck for those? Like, what did you take out to make extra room for those? Okay,
so basically my thought was to take off the 3/3s, because having a lot of 4/4s in the format makes I forget the name of the card. That's one white mana. It's a 3/3 with Metalcraft. Ardent Recruit.
Yeah, Ardent Recruit. Yep.
And basically I took off it, and I basically make the deck only blue and red. So Trade Inspector was another card that was in the build, in the previous build. And I actually took off these 2 cards to put the plus the new Reinforcer and this new card. It's kind of the same slot, you know. It was kind of easy to build.
So you didn't necessarily have to change a whole lot, really. You just sort of went all in on the affinity style build.
Yeah, because there are some cards on the affinity build that they cannot be outside of the deck, like Galvanic Blast, Thoughtcast, Atog.
Right.
Even Atog maybe can be took off. I don't know. Even the Prophetic Prism that used to be one of the best cards of the deck, now it's not as important as it was before. So there's a lot of really important cards that you cannot take off from the deck, and the cards that are not that important, like Trade Inspector, the Saint Chaser, Core Skyfisher, stuff like that, you can only trim them from the deck and play the new cards that are very stronger than these ones.
That's excellent. Yeah, so I'm glad to hear. I'm glad to see the screenshots too. Those new dual lands, the new dual artifact lands, seem to be pretty strong. Who cares if they come in tapped? You know what I mean? They count towards affinity, and that's pretty much what you want them to do anyway.
True.
Yeah, so if you think that that's probably the strongest deck in Pauper, do you think that there are other decks that can keep up with it? Or like a good option if you wanted to beat it?
Yeah, actually I think some decks with having option to sideboard cards can deal with affinity, but the thing is, these decks, they need a lot of hate for affinity in quantities, you know. So basically they have to make a lot of room on their sideboard or even the main deck to make this matchup winnable. And maybe if they face another deck that is not affinity, they will lack some sideboard cards, you know. So this can be an issue for this kind of decks, like maybe Boros Bully, Boros Monarch.
Yeah.
But I can see some decks trying to keep up, but it's really hard in the long term, for me at least.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It's a pretty Shatterstorm aside, it's a pretty explosive deck on its own, the new affinity builds.
Yeah, and resilient.
Yeah, very strong. Christian, what have you been playing lately? Anything?
So this past week, before all of the new cards got or spoiled and came out online, I've been playing a lot of Boggles. I played, I think, like 3 or 4 leagues with it.
Okay.
I don't know. And something that I learned is maybe that I'm not as good at like taking and like deciding on mulligan decisions as I thought that I was.
That's a very hard deck to mulligan. It can lose the game off a bad mulligan.
Yeah, because like I learned, for example, that like ideally, right, like you always want to have the creature and then the 3 mana enchantment that gives it +2/+2 Ancestral Mask for every enchantment, and then like some sort of ramp or something. And like ideally that's in your opening 7 or 6 or however many you keep. But I learned after like the first 1 or 2 mulligans, you know, you really can't be that selective with the hands that you keep.
Yeah.
A lot of times, you know, if you have 1 or 2 of the 3 pieces that you're looking for, a lot of times you should just keep that 6 and hope to play a slightly longer game. Because I think my first league or 2 with the deck, I was rushing things a lot, trying to win really quickly. And something that I realized against a lot of the meta, that deck actually has an amount of inevitability because it just invalidates so many cards. Or at least that's what I've been thinking about it.
Right. Sure. Yeah, I realized that too. Kind of the same things when I played that deck on my charity stream, that I mulliganed a little too aggressively while also trying to be too aggressive in the early turns. You can take that deck a little slower if it needs to be, trying to get that extra turn or 2 of a land drop or enchantment or ethereal armor or whatever. I was just trying to get too explosive with it, I guess, and that would mess up my mulligans real bad.
What about you, Alexander? Do you ever play, or have you ever played the Boggles decks?
Yeah. Sometimes I do play with Boggles. I think sometimes it's not your mulligan decisions. Maybe the meta is very heavily bad for the deck. So sometimes you are thinking you make every decision on the best way possible, and opponents having a lot of counter spell and a lot of prismatic strains makes it kind of impossible to have some good results sometimes. And but I agree with you guys about mulliganing too aggressively. Sometimes you have to be you need some amount of of cards, like maybe having two creatures against edict effects can be sometimes good. So it's kind of tricky to evaluate because there's a lot of different approaches with different decks with playing auras, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, what about you, Brad? Have you been playing any Pauper this past week?
I did. I did not get a chance to play online a whole lot, but about an hour and a half before we started recording, I got home from my first paper pauper event at the LGS in like almost 18 months, 16 months, something like that. The record was not good, but it felt amazing to play in person. It wasn't a huge showing. I think we ended up just going 3 rounds. I took my black-green Tordex, Tortured Existence, one of my pet decks. I love it. It did not do very well. I ended up with 1 and 2 for the day. I pretty much cleaned up against elves. I had some really troubling mana issues in my first match against Heroic. Let's see, and then the third match I ended up playing against blue-white familiars, and I just couldn't get anything going. Like, I had my Tortured Existence online. I had a little bit of the engine in the graveyard. Things were working, but next thing I know, I look up and I'm facing down 6 0-4 walls and Seagate Oracles and Muldrifters, and then he just mills me out. There was nothing really I could do about it. But I lost. I would say I probably lost 2 games on the day just to my own bad play. Like, against my familiar's opponent, I was cycling through my Tilling Tree folks to get my lands back out of the graveyard after dredging them away or what have you, and I put down the Tilling Tree folk on the graveyard, get 2 lands out of my graveyard, put them in my hand, and then forget to make a land drop. And I'd be like, pass the turn. He's like, you didn't play a land. I'm like, oh my god. So a lot of pilot error just because I haven't really played in person in so long. But it was good though. It felt good. I don't think I had the deck quite tuned, and then really I wasn't expecting the decks that I saw. Usually, a year and a half ago, I guess. The meta at the LGS was pretty hyper aggressive, and a lot of brews as well, a lot of home brews. But this time it was elves and familiars, and heroic and slivers, and there was another person playing more of a Jund Tordex, and he actually split or tied for first place. So I guess that's good for the archetype. I like to see that sort of thing. But yeah, it was a good day. Good to get some paper in my hands and sit across the table from an actual person.
Alexander, do you play a lot in paper, or are you mostly online?
I used to play a lot in paper.
Sorry, I meant before.
Pandemic,
I guess.
Yeah.
I used to love playing some IRL Magic, So
yeah.
So
that's how you got your trophies too, right?
Yeah. Maybe let me show to the.
Those are all paper pauper.
Oh, they are not there, but they should be there. The thing is, they are from live tournaments, but I there's a weekly pauper, actually 2 weekly pauper tournaments here on the city I live. One that used to be on Thursday, and one of them used to be on Saturday afternoon, like the same as the one that you played today on Saturday afternoon. And it's very cool. To be honest, I was playing not so much because before the COVID and what happens, I used to not play so much because of the Magic Online, but I kind of regret that a little bit, because when I return playing live tournaments, I think I will be playing more than I used to play.
Yep, absolutely. And I think just by spending the last 12 or 14 months playing MTGO once I actually sat down today in paper, there was a lot of things that I didn't realize I forgot, like certain triggers that MTGO just automatically hits for you, and
Yeah.
asking yes or no questions, like, do you want to do that? And those are things that I just don't think about now because I haven't had to worry about it in so long.
That is true. What I remember sometimes when I used to play a lot of MTGO, and then I went to play a live tournament, was I forgetting an emergence caved
Uh-huh.
rebound trigger, you know? So I I the else player killed me, and he was at one life.
Oh,
And yeah, and then I saw the graveyard, and the card was there exiled, and then I messed up, you know.
yeah, I 100% agree with that. I had a couple of those today.
I don't know. I'm really excited to get back playing paper to make a lot of memories because I really enjoy playing Magic Online. But all of my best Magic memories are in person with somebody.
Yeah, 100%.
And
For sure.
I've made a lot of really good friends from just showing up somewhere and sitting across from them playing a game. So
Cool.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it was a good time. Losing record, but that's fine. I'll take losing record for the next 12 events, just as long as I can sit down across the table from somebody. It was good.
well, so those are the decks that we've been playing for the last week. I guess now we can go ahead and transition into our main topic, which this week is just going through Modern Horizons 2 spoilers, talking about cards that we're excited about, cards that we think that will be good. Normally, we would go through every single card, but because we were sort of late getting to it, some of these cards are already being played, as well as we have a special guest. What we're going to do is just go through the colors in Wooburg order and sort of just pick a card or two that each one of us like or think will be good.
Yep, absolutely. Actually, before we get into that, I did have another question for Alex here. Every time I pop in on your streams, you're playing a meta deck, if you will, tier 1.5 or tier 1 deck through some leagues. Are you much of a brewer yourself, or you pretty much stick to established lists?
No, yeah, actually, I really like to brew decks, but I don't usually like to play brews on leagues, you know.
Yep, that makes
So
sense.
I have actually 2 free tournaments that I do on Thursday nights and on Thursday morning, and they are free. And I am the one that I am organizing these tournaments, and the fact that it's kind of a little bit more casual because it's free, you don't have to put some money to play. I usually brew some decks to play, and this is a really good moment for me because I really brew some really different decks from leagues, and because I don't have the pressure to
Right, exactly.
make a positive record to not be losing play points.
Right, and those are the events over at Cards Realm, right? Like the Figute League and the you run your own tournament there too, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly that. The Card Realm tournaments.
Yep, and they are totally free to enter. I've entered a couple. I've watched a couple. I've announced a couple. They're really good times. And yeah, you're right. You'll get 50 or 60 players in there, and only maybe a handful of actual meta decks. It's a lot of time. It's just people want to try out a brew, and it's kind of in that middle stage between a league and between the tournament practice room. Like you could actually win some stuff, but you're not losing anything if your brew falls apart.
For sure, I really like that. That's that. I don't know that. Like I said, that state of playing the game,
Yeah, it definitely provides a level of comfort and sort of relaxation when you want to get out there and play something different.
True.
Yeah, I didn't mean to derail the set review. That was just something I thought of because I know that I've never seen you play anything, like a brew, quote unquote. So I was just curious about that.
Yeah. No, that's totally fine. That's what Alexandre is here for, I'm sure, to answer some questions and talk about all things Pauper.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I guess we can go ahead and start off for white. I know for sure which card in white I'm excited about. And I would love to hear from both of you guys first if there are cards that you think could or will be good.
Sure. Let me see here real quick, make sure I got them all pulled up. Yeah, I think there's a handful of pretty interesting ones in all the colors, but specifically white. A lot of like the modular archetypes. I'm kind of wondering if that could be a thing in Pauper. I'm not sure if it ever will be or not. It's a fun archetype to play, that's for sure. I know a lot of people have sort of pet decks built around that keyword. Let me see where we're at here. Yeah, I was looking through them during the pre-game show or pre-show sort of conversation. And I think white, unfortunately, white is probably one of my least favorite colors out of this set, particularly specifically. Generally, I flock to white cards because I love mono white heroic and white weenies and all this other stuff. But no, I think I like, as weird as it is, and it's not my type of style of play, I do enjoy Late to Dinner. It's that white and 3 generic sorcery for return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield and then create a food token.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm very much the same. I'm really excited about Late to Dinner. Alexander, if you don't know, one of the things that I really like to play is Reanimator decks.
Cool.
I don't think that they're very good necessarily, although sometimes you can just steal win after win.
Yeah, sure.
But I really enjoy them and wish they were good. So anytime I see a card that says something like this, I'm always really excited about it.
Yeah, actually, there's a video on my YouTube channel that it's me giving some uncommon and rare cards to this kind of rogue decks. And one of the decks that I actually talked about was the Reanimator. And I tried to make Stitch Together as a Pauper card. You know, Stitch Together. I think it might make the deck good. And another card that I have chosen for the Reanimator was Angel of Despair. That okay. One that enters on the battlefield and it destroys a permanent.
Yeah, I know for a while you were posting those on Twitter, your custom cards. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. And I think Reanimator needs another Reanimator card that costs at maximum 3 mana and another good creature to be more competitive.
Yeah, I think so too. A lot of people go in the Ulamog Crusher sort of avenue, but I'm sure Christian can speak to this more than I can. But it's hard for me when I play that deck to kind of go all in on one specific creature.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, first, Stitch Together is a sorcery that costs black that returns target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. But if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, it puts it in the battlefield instead, just to get that out of the way.
That's so sweet.
I don't know, for me recently, actually, Brad did a stream for charity where he was raising money and playing Magic against people. And I went in there and he was playing, I think, Mono White Heroic, and I decided to bring a Brew to play a match against him. And instead of playing the all-in Reanimator, we played like a blue-black control deck with just a Reanimator finish. And that seemed like it was okay, but again, the problem is that whenever you're playing a blue-black control deck, you have to have a really good reason to not play the fairies. And unfortunately, I don't think playing Ulamog's Crusher is a good reason to not play fairies.
Yeah, you had like mystical teachings and stuff in there, didn't you?
Yeah, it was actually Forbidden Alchemy.
Forbidden Alchemy.
Yeah, it's the one that puts stuff into your graveyard. But
yep.
I don't know. It's I mostly agree with you that I think it needs one more reanimation spell at 2 or 3 mana. Even if it had a drawback, where like if you lost some life or something, that would probably still be fine. And then maybe one more creature. I do know that some people really like Greater Sandworm already. So maybe you could do that in Ulamog's Crusher. I don't think it's very good. I see you shaking your head as well. But I don't know. I think a good start would be just another reanimation spell for that deck.
Now, what I don't play, there's a similar card to Late to Dinner. It's Breath of Life. I think that one is 4 and a white. Is that correct? 4 generic and a white.
I think Breath of Life is actually just the same mana cost.
Oh, is it in this one? The only difference is it makes the food, I guess.
Yeah.
So you're just looking more for extra copies of that same effect. It's not really a direct replacement.
Yeah, I mean, because some people played Mardu Reanimator anyways. So this one, you can play like 4 of this, and then 2 of Breath of Life, and then 4 Exhume, and then maybe get wins. The problem is that the 4 mana cards are so slow. But if I had to pick a white card, this one would probably be my favorite.
Cool. Well, what about you, Alexander? Have you played with any of the white cards yet, or any of them sticking out to you that you want to give a shot to?
I haven't played with them, but I like the modular mechanic. I think when some affinity cards are banned and the storm cards are banned, maybe the modular can be competitive, because I think it's a good mechanic, because it really fits with proliferate and
they push proliferate quite a bit too in the set.
That is true, and maybe with some sack outlets like Carrion Feeder, the modular mechanic can be very. I think it has room for being competitive, as it is on the modern format.
Sure, absolutely. Did you have any other white cards you wanted to talk about, Christian, or was that pretty much it?
That was pretty much it. Unfortunately, I think white is probably one of the weaker colors from this set. I would say that, normally I might be excited about a card like Break Ties as like a sideboard option, but I don't think it's as good as sideboard options that we already have in our format.
Right, correct. Yep. Yep, I think white got some really good cards at higher rarity levels, but as far as like your limited environment, your common level, there's just not a lot to talk about.
Up next is blue. I don't know about either of you guys. I have one card that is actually really exciting to me in blue, and then the rest of them are just okay. Actually, there's maybe two cards that I'm pretty excited about in blue.
Okay. You want to give us one of those real quick, and then we'll move over to see what Mr. Alexander says.
Yeah. My first one is Lose Focus, which is an instant for a blue and a generic. That's an instant that counters target spell unless its controller plays 2, and it has Replicate for a blue. The reason that this card excites me is I play a lot of blue-red fairies, and I think that it could be good against the Cascade decks if they ever become really popular, really good. And I like that even though our format has counterspell, they find ways to still make counterspells that could be good in situations in our format, to where it's not always obvious. Like whether or not you should be playing some number of Lose Focus in certain metas.
Is this something you want as a one of in every main board, or is this more of a sideboard counterspell depending on what you're facing?
Yeah, so in the fairies decks, especially in the blue-red one, there's always like 3 or 4 slots that they sort of dedicate to like maybe cards that are interchangeable. So sometimes they play more of the Abrade, and then sometimes they'll play a Dispel in the main deck, and people sort of they at least try and tailor it to the meta. I think Pauper has a wide open enough meta that it's actually hard to tailor your main deck to a meta, truthfully. But I think this could be one of those cards that if you were really, not doing well against Cascade decks or what have you, you could play this instead of the Dispel as a way to try and fight those decks. Especially whenever they get off to their fast starts and they're trying to boarding party really early, and then because they can go like boarding party and then cascade into a 3/3 that draws them a card, and being able to counter both of those can really stop them in their tracks, I find.
Okay, I like that. What do you think, Weber? What do you see in the blue? I've seen, obviously, you've played with Ethereum Spinner. Is that your favorite blue card so far, or you want to try out some other ones?
Yeah, it is my favorite card so far. Maybe Hard Evidence as a kind of a Trapping Inspector impression, as a way to maybe ninja attacking with the O3 blue crab, maybe in some mono blue affinity. But given the meta that we have, my favorite card is Ethereum Spinner. I didn't know this card was very good because when it was first, I'm not sure if it was released at the end of the spoilers season, but this card is only good because we have another Mirroring Force, in my opinion, because only having 12 cards, I don't think it's enough to to make a argument for a 3-mana card, but this card is very good given the affinity situation that we have in the moment.
Yeah, because we got the second enforcer. Yeah, I was wondering that too. It's very it seems very fair on his face. It's just a blue and 2 for a 2/1 wizard. Whenever you cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater, create a 1/1 popper artifact creature token. That seems pretty innocuous, pretty fair on its face. But yeah, I've seen it come up, make up some crazy shenanigans when you're dropping just Mirror Enforcer after Mirror Enforcer, and then the Salamanders, and then all that. And it triggers off Frogmite too. Frogmite's technically a 4-mana creature.
True.
But yeah, no, that was mine too. You mentioned Hard Focus. That's the one I'm kind of excited to play with. I just like it. I like the crab. I like the token. I like that it's a big 0/3 dirtily crab token, and you get to investigate in it.
Yeah. I'm sorry to.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine.
But there's another cool blue card that is Tilting Whale, because it can be good with Retraction Helix.
Yes.
Combo.
Yeah, I saw someone post on Twitter about that too. Yeah, the combo with your Ornithopters and your Retraction Helixes and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, that one that he's referring to is Steelfin Whale. It's 5 generic and a blue for a 3/4 with affinity for artifacts. So typically this is going to be 1 blue for a 3/4 creature. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you untap the whale. Yep, you can get up to some shenanigans with Retraction Helix and Ornithopter and Nettle Drone and all these other crazy stuff. For sure.
Were there any other blue cards that you guys liked?
I'm always a sucker for bounce spells. Like we have Recalibrate, return target creature to its owner's hand. If you've discarded the card this turn, draw a card. This sort of plays into the madness theme of the whole set. I don't know how blue really plays into madness very well, but I'm always a sucker for any sort of snap or bounce effect. And then also, too, I've seen a lot of people talk about Floodhound, a single blue mana 1/2 elemental dog that investigates. 3 generic, and you tap it and makes a clue token. I don't know what you would do with that one, but a lot of people seem to like it.
Yeah. I don't know. I liked the art on it. I'm not sure that it's very good in Pauper, but it does look really good in Limited to me.
Yeah, it probably is pretty good in Limited.
Yeah, well, up next we have Black. And this, for me, there's sort of a card that I look at, and it feels almost like a pet card. And then I'm not really excited by too much more in Black after that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just because of the type of decks that I play. I think I like more of the black cards out of Modern Horizons 2 than I do any of the other monocolored cards. What about you, Alex? Are any of the black cards piquing your interest, or have you played with any of them yet?
Yeah, I have played with Bond Shards, and yeah, that's it. Only Bond Shards. No, yeah, and also Kitchen Imp with the Rakdos Madness deck.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's definitely my choice.
I agree. I think the black has a lot of really cool and well-designed cards.
Yeah, it's pretty fleshed out. It seems like every black card that was printed in common at this set has some sort of extra text. There's no just vanilla spells or vanilla creatures. Everything's going towards some sort of synergy, whether it's madness or threshold or what have you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a big fan. Also, the Kitchen Imp, the creature imp. It's a 2/2 for 3 generic and a black, flying and haste. But you can cast it for its madness cost of a single black. That's pretty huge, I think.
Yeah, I think that card could be good. I don't know a lot about the madness decks or discard decks. But 2/2 for 1 mana, especially
Flying Haste,
is very good in most formats. So
yep.
I think if you could find a way to enable that well, it would be good in our format as well.
Yeah, I don't know if all these black cards are actually good. I just know that every time a new one was spoiled, I was like, hey, Tordex. There's another one. Oh, hey, Tordex. Look at this. It says Graveyard, or it says Draw a Card. Hey, Tordex. Another one is that Blade Prowler for 2 and a black. It's a 2/3 Rogue, which is exciting for my party deck. 1 generic, tap, pay 1 life, draw a card. Activate this only if you've discarded a card this turn. So that's just asking you to be madness or whatever.
Yeah, I understand. The main card that I think caught my interest, Alexander already mentioned it, was Bone Shards, which is just cost a black, and as an additional cost to it, you sacrifice a creature or discard a card. You destroy target creature or planeswalker. Obviously, we don't have planeswalkers in our formats, but 1 mana, destroy target creature is pretty strong. And then sacrifice a creature or discard a card. If your deck already wants to do those things, it seems like it could be very powerful to me.
Yeah, it's no problem at all. What else is catching your eye over there, Alexander?
So one card that I really like from the black cards, there are actually two cards that I like, besides the ones that we had already talked. One of them is Echoing Return, that can return a lot of creatures with the same name, and I think this card goes well with this card. You know that cards that you can have a lot of them on your deck, not only 4.
Yeah, like the rats or persistent petitioners or whatever. Yeah,
mainly the rats. I think it's kind of, I want to build a rat deck playing that card and playing a lot of the same name.
Yep, that would be awesome. It's Echoing Return for a single black. It's a sorcery. Return target creature and all other cards with the same name as that card from your graveyard to your hand. So yeah, that can get pretty nutty, I think.
Yeah, and the rat is Rat Colony.
Rat Colony, yeah, it's like 1 and a black, and then it gets +1/+0 for every other rat colony or rat you control or something like that.
Yeah. I think it's a fun combination. And
yeah, absolutely.
One other card that I think it's really strong. It's Nested Shambler. I think it's good in black and green aristocrat decks.
Yep, absolutely. I saw a lot of people talking about this one, but it sort of flew under the radar. I think I saw more people talking about the art on this card than the actual card itself. But yeah, I'm definitely a fan of it. Anything that wants you to sacrifice your own creatures or pump them up or both, I'm a fan of. But yeah, this was a 1/1 zombie for a single black. It's when Nested Shambler dies, create X, taps 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens where X is Nested Shambler's power.
I think it's go well with Rancor.
Yeah. Get the Rancor back, you get at least 3 tokens. Yeah, absolutely. And those tokens can in turn feed your Carrion Feeder or whatever you're doing, Village Rites, whatever your plan is, or to cast a Bayou Groff, whatever you may need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess we can go ahead and move on to red. I'm not sure how you guys are feeling about red. I was really excited for the Storm card Galvanic Relay, which was 2 generic and a red for a sorcery. But that was when I thought that you got to play all the cards without paying their mana cost the next turn. And then once I realized that wasn't the case, I was really disappointed.
Yeah, that doesn't, not yet anyway, that doesn't feel like a common level effect.
Oh, I know.
Maybe in 2022 when it's pushed, we can start casting cards for free. But yeah, I don't think there was a whole lot in red here that I wanted to talk about. I'm pretty intrigued by the Lightning Spear, the 1 in a red artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+0 and trample, and then you can sacrifice the spear for 2 in a red to do 3 damage to any target. So it's a little pricey to get that extra reach, but I do think it's pretty neat.
What about you, Alexander? Did you have any red cards that you were excited about?
I'm not watching them. I am looking at them here, and I don't see any good cards that I like.
Yeah, I've seen actually this morning too. I saw, and maybe it was Hamuda that posted his Black-Red Madness list on Twitter, and he was running the Scophos Reaver, the 2 in a red, 2/3 You can cast it for madness of 1 in a red, but as long as it's your turn, it gets +2/+0. I thought that was pretty interesting. I don't know exactly how good it is, but a 4/3 for 1 in a red, that seems pretty good to me.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those you're only going to play because it's a madness creature. If it didn't have madness, I don't think there's any reason to play it otherwise.
True.
But yeah, overall, red's kind of iffy. I think Modern got new toys. There were a few people who were excited about the new sort of faithless looting knockoff, but outside of that, I don't think red did a whole lot for Pauper in general.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I guess we can just go ahead and move on to green then, which has the big one that everyone was freaking out over.
Yeah, the crack open.
Of course, we're really talking about Chatterstorm.
Yes.
Right.
I had people, the minute this card was spoiled, I had people from multiple Discords and private messages and stuff just sending me pictures like, what the hell is this card? What? I want to play Pauper now. Or people were like, this card's ridiculous. Alexandre, have you actually had a chance to play with a Chatterstorm deck or just against them?
I had actually, before the set got released, I played with Weather the Storm, kind of replacing the card just to show how the deck would function.
Okay, I remember that.
Yeah, but I haven't played with the card itself. But one thing that's very funny was I was live when the card was released, when the card was spoiled, to be honest. In fact, and the first thing I thought when I saw the card was it was a fake, and I said something like, "Oh, this is a really cool fake card, No, it's a very creative Squirrels or Storm, So
yeah,
and then I was kind of slowly realizing that it wasn't a fake card, and it was very. So this is real, and I got very worried.
Yeah, rightfully so. I've seen nothing but craziness, screenshots and people brewing up decks that are just going off on like turn 2, turn 3 with just flooding the board with first day of class, and they're all hasty 2/3 tokens, and it's just it's obnoxious. I don't think it's quite empty the Warren's level of storm power, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
How long do you think this survives Pauper before it hits the ban list? Or do you think it will? Do you think they'll end up doing something that WotC normally does, and they'll ban the new goblin that makes things cheaper instead of actually hitting their pet card?
I think in this case they will go after the Shatterstorm, and I think, to be honest, I think they need to do something with the new affinity deck, because I think both of them. Yeah, I think both decks need to. They're very ahead, in my opinion.
What I guess I haven't really thought about Affinity getting anything banned out of it. What would you pick out of that? One of the new creatures? I mean, I don't think you can ban a whole cycle of the dual lands. It would have to be the spinner or the new salamander or whatever, right?
Yeah, it's really, really tricky. This one is really tricky. But I think the new salamander is a fine choice,
Excellent, yeah. The first one on the list here for green is one that kind of caught a lot of people by surprise when it was printed at Common, because it showed up as an original new card in Strixhaven Mystical Archive as a rare, but it is Abundant Harvest. For a single green sorcery, you choose land or non-land, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a card of the chosen kind. Put that card into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Personally, I like this card a lot. I like any sort of green card that does this sort of effect, like track down, lead the stampede, widening away, anything. But I'm just struggling with this particular card for it to find a home in a current existing green X or mono green deck, or if it's something you kind of have to brew around. What do you guys think?
For me, I thought that maybe it would be good in like green-red Cascade, just because to like smooth out your draws, or maybe like Jund, because a lot of times like you'll draw too many lands, or you'll end up like a mana or two short, specifically in the Jund deck when I played it. And so this could help you get more bounce lands and stuff like that without actually having to play more. But I'm not sure, it could be too slow for those decks, because then you sort of telegraph what's coming to your opponent, and
Sure.
a turn to prepare and stuff like that.
Right. What do you think, Alexander? Do you like
Yeah.
Abundant Harvest?
I do like the card is very strong, and I agree with Christian. I think it's going to be a good option for green decks, like especially the ones with Cascade, because it's sort of like it's kind of a ponder card. It looks like a green ponder in some ways.
Yeah, it does a
And-
pretty good impression of it.
Yeah,
And I don't think, if you're playing the Jund Cascade list and you go Boring Party into a 1-drop, a lot of times that doesn't feel very good, even if it is a Lightning Bolt. But something like cascading into Abundant Harvest, like you guys said, probably feels pretty good. You can still get some decent value off of it.
yeah, true.
Outside of those two, were there any green cards that you guys were excited about? Because to me, it was sort of those two really took all of my eyesight from the color.
Right. I do like. I don't know how competitive it's going to be, but it's definitely going into my Pauper cube, and that's the one right next to Abundant Harvest. Bannerhide Khrushchev. It is 3 generic and a green for a 4/4 beast with trample, and it's just kind of keyword after keyword here. It's got reinforce of 2. So for 1 and a green, you can discard this card and put 2+1/+1 counters on target creature. Or you can also scavenge it for 5 generic and 2 green. Exile this card from your graveyard, put a number of +1/+1 counters equal to this card's power on target creature. I think that's pretty interesting. Seems like it's got quite a few uses. I don't know how competitive constructed play it'll see, but I do like it.
Really solid card, this one for a Pauper cube or something like that. I like the cards with Proliferate, the Smell Fear, the fight one. That Proliferate, I think it's a cool mechanic. And the Urban Daggertooth, that can be a good option for a black and green Pestilence deck.
Yeah, yep. I thought about that too when I saw it. Yeah, I wonder if we've been getting sort of a high density of these Proliferate cards ever since, was it War of the Spark, I believe. And we've yet to really see a good Proliferate deck. I wonder if this set sort of makes that archetype legitimate or not, but I think it's worth trying out. But yeah, Smell Fear is just straight up 1 and a green to Proliferate, which means you choose any number of target permanents and or players, and give each another counter of each kind that is already there. Sorry, I botched that. But then you target creature you control fights up to 1 creature you do not control. So yeah, it's just a fight spell, but you do get to proliferate beforehand. So if you need to pump up that creature, and then Urban Daggertooth it's 2 and 2 green for a 4/3 dinosaur. I like the dinosaurs, and it's got Enrage, which I think is one of the cooler keywords that exists in Magic, even though it doesn't see much play. Whenever Urban Daggertooth is dealt damage, you proliferate. So I think those work pretty well together. I like that Smell Fear isn't as conditional as, say, like a Savage Swipe, where you only get the bonus if it's a plus, a power of 2 creature. But yeah, I think those are solid choices.
Yeah, absolutely. And then moving on to multicolored cards. There was obviously the Goblin. I don't know how to say the second word.
I think it's
Anarchomancer, maybe.
Yeah, like Anarchist, but Anarchomancer.
Yeah. It's a 2/2 for Gruul, and each spell you cast that's red or green costs 1 less to cast. I really like that. One of my really good friends here locally plays a lot of Modern Storm, and it felt really nice that our format got a card that was an analog to cards that he really likes. Because a lot of times, like whenever I talk to people because of the podcast, I always try and relate what they like to play to something in Pauper. And now I have a direct analog, like, look at this card that is exactly like the Electromancer in the format that you play.
Yeah.
So
And it's pretty much a key piece to the Chatterstorm decks, if I'm thinking about it, or if I've seen the right decks or list posted. It really, it turns your first day of class into a 1-mana spell. It turns your Chatterstorm itself into a 1-mana spell. It's pretty nutty. What, Alexander, when you look at a card like Goblin and Narcomancer, and it has this ability, are you just seeing broken, unfair things, or do you think there's a deck that can use this in a fair sense?
The only problem I see is that Pauper is really it's a format that's really heavy on removal. So relying on cards that stick on the battlefield, it's really tough because we have a lot of Snuff Out and Scred and Galvanic Blast and Lightning Bolt. Mm-hmm. So it's really hard to rely on this kind of cards. But at the same time, I think it can be an option. The thing is, I don't think Shatterstorm, the way it's designed today, I don't think that the deck needs an Arcomancer. But I like this card maybe on a Cascade deck, like a lane destruction deck, something like that.
Okay, I hadn't even thought about it in sort of the green, Gruul ramp Panza strategies.
Yeah, because relying on this kind of cards to a Storm or I don't know, it's kind of iffy to me.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. I know there was another one here that a lot of people were talking about when it was first spoiled, and that's the Chrome Courier, the very first one here on the gold card list. It's a single generic and then a blue and a white for an artifact creature Thopter. It's a 1/1 with flying, of course. And when Chrome Courier enters the battlefield, reveal the top 2 cards of your library. Put one of them into your hand and the other into your graveyard. If you put an artifact card into your hand this way, you also gain 3 life. There seems to be a lot of words on this card. What do you think about it?
I think it's a strong card, but I don't see the home for it on the moment.
Yeah, I think this is a card that you're going to have to build a whole separate deck for, or build a whole separate deck around it, for sure. And I hate to make the comparison to like a Seagate Oracle, because Seagate's just obviously better, but it is the same CMC. They both cost 3 mana. They both look at the top 2. This one just cares a little bit more about your graveyard and artifacts.
Yeah.
Were there any other multicolor cards, Alexander, that you were excited about?
I like Foundry Helix. I think it's a really cool card that we kind of always thought about when maybe I forgot the name of the card that sacks an artifact to deal 5 damage to any target. I forgot the name of the card. But it's kind of like that, and it kills Guardian of the Guild Pact.
Yeah, because it's multicolored. Yeah, I think this is the closest. I've been asking. No, go ahead.
Shrapnel Blast.
Shrapnel Blast. Yep. I've been it's kind of a silly request, but I've been asking for a Lightning Helix downshift for about 3 years now, and obviously with the printing of this, I don't think we're ever going to get it, but I do enjoy this card quite a bit. It's a generic, a red and a white for an instant. As an additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice a permanent. Foundry Helix deals 4 damage to any target. If the sacrificed permanent was an artifact, you gain 4 life. Now, is this something you think that the existing Boros decks would like to use? Because they do have a decent density of artifacts, but not necessarily a ton of them.
The thing I see is that the Boros decks are they don't have a lot of room for new cards.
Yeah, they're already running the Galvanic Blast, and they have access to Flame Slash and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I was thinking this card on maybe it's kind of a weird idea, but a Boros land destruction deck using Ichor Wellspring, Crack the Earth, and this card on a Boros shell.
Okay, I can get behind that. You said everything that I like: Boros and land destruction.
Yeah,
I'm a fan of all of that. That is fantastic. Another one that I looked at, I posted it up on Twitter, and I pretty much just put the image up there, and I said I will let you guys tell me where to put it. But I really like it is that Dihada's Ploy. It's one generic, a blue and a black for an instant. You draw 2 cards, then discard a card. If you gain life equal to the number of cards you've discarded this turn, but then it also has Jumpstart. For those of you who don't remember what Jumpstart is, you may cast this card from your graveyard by discarding a card in addition to paying its other cost, then exile this card. There's a lot going on here, but I'm not sure exactly where it fits or if it's just another one of those that needs to have something built around it specifically to make this work.
I really like the fact that the cards kind of combo with itself. The Jumpstart giving another discard on the turn and +1 life. It's really cool.
Yeah, because if you've got one Dihada's Ploy in the graveyard, you can discard another one to it, for the Jumpstart. Yeah, absolutely. I just like those. It's very similar to, I think I brought up the comparison to like Consult the Necro Sages. It's one, a blue and a black for target player draws 2 cards or target player discards 2 cards. I think it's something like that, but it was the closest comparison I could come up with. But I enjoy it. I'm sure I'll throw it in something terrible and it'll be terrible, but I'll have fun playing it.
So we were talking about the Reanimator, and I was thinking that maybe Breathless Night it's kind of a weird idea, but having a Reanimator deck with both Unearth to return creatures costing 3 or less mana, and Exhume to return Ulamax Crusher, and to when you return the Ulamax Crusher, you give a +1/+1 counter to Breathless Night. Maybe an Orzhov deck having both of these Reanimator modules, the Reanimator reanimating a small creature and a big creature on the same deck. Maybe it could be cool.
Yeah, you're killing me. First you're talking about Boros Land Destruction, and now you're talking about Orzhov Reanimator. I can't. It's getting hot in here. Holy cow. But yeah, that's beautiful. I love the fact that it's flying and lifelink for some reason. It's Orzhov, so it's got to have lifelink. It's really cool art. It's 2/2, and the text box on it, like he was referring to, it says, whenever Breathless Night or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, if that creature entered from a graveyard or you cast it from a graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on Breathless Night. So that's where all your Unearths and your Exhumes and your Late to Dinners come into play. When you're bringing all these creatures back, this Breathless Night could easily be a 4/4 or 5/5 flying lifelink within the matter of 2 or 3 turns.
Well, and then after those, we get into the colorless cards.
Dun, dun, dun.
Which we've already talked about it a lot. So, Alexander, if you want to take away what your favorite colorless card is.
Yeah, I think everybody knows by now. But it's Sojourner's Companion. Mm-hmm. Such a strong card. And at the same time, the card is really, really strong. But at the same time, the card is, in my opinion, really bad designed, because I don't know, it's kind of a lazy design in my opinion, because it's basically Mirror Enforcer and with another ability. Maybe they could change a little bit from the mana cost and the toughness and power of the card to make it a little bit different, because this is kind of lazy design for me.
That was one of the first things I noticed as well. I mean, it's the exact same mana value, it's exact same power, toughness. They're both affinity for artifacts. Like, they just literally slap some new artwork and a new name on it. It does have the ability, artifact land cycling for 2. You can discard it and search your deck for an artifact land card. Have you ever used that ability, or are you just straight up casting this thing for free every turn?
Yeah, actually this ability comes up a lot, because sometimes you, for example, against Storm, that you want to have land drops for having multiple Dispel and Hydropest during every turn that you pass to your opponent. So you need to find the City of the Synods, out of City of the Synods during the game.
Okay.
And sometimes when you are, maybe you think your opponent have a counter spell, you you do something that's uncounterable like that, it can be useful against like blue-black fairies that they might counter your prism, but they cannot counter this. So you find a land and you play. So I think it can be very useful. You, of course, you need to be very careful because this 4/4 may be the difference between losing and winning. But I have used the second ability and it's very useful in some spots.
Cool. Excellent. Yeah, I kind of wondered about that. Everyone's just sort of stuck on the fact that it is another Mirror Enforcer, but it did have that second ability that I always find pretty interesting. It gives you sort of that Trinket Mage ability where you can go get your artifact land or what have you. I thought there was more artifacts in this set, but I guess not. I guess everything sort of distracted me from the fact there isn't a ton of them. But I know another one that a lot of people talked about, and not just in Pauper, but the Ornithopter of Paradise. Talk about lazy names. It's too generic for an 0/2 flyer, and you tap it to add 1 mana of any color. Basically, Birds of Paradise and an Ornithopter. Ornithopter of Paradise. What do you think? Good, bad, indifferent?
I don't think this card is very playable, but no problem.
Yep, same here. I just know there was a lot of people talking about mainly for the memes of it all, you know, Boltithopter and Thopter of Paradise and all that. Yeah.
And then, you know, after those, the only other big addition, I guess, were the artifact lands, which are just the dual color cycle. Every dual color got a land that enters battlefield tapped that's indestructible, and it's an artifact.
Yep. So many people looked over the indestructible part at first. I think they were just blown away that Modern got artifact lands again, and the fact that they were dual colored, and then like 5 minutes later, everyone's like, oh snap, they're indestructible. But yeah, they're pretty powerful. All the friendly color pairs got their own cards. We got a full 10 cycle of them. Mm-hmm. I think the ones I've seen the most play are probably the Silver Bluff Bridge, which provides a blue or red. It's the Is It colored one. And then the Razor Tide Bridge, which is the blue and white one. I've seen those two pop up, I think, more than any other ones. Unless I'm just not paying attention.
Yeah, I think in the Grixis Affinity decks, people are also playing the blue-black one Mistvault Bridge because sometimes they play, or at least in one of them they were playing them because they were playing like Reaping the Graves in their sideboard or something.
Okay, yeah, and there's Disciple of the Vault's been kind of a big deal lately, and yep.
But yeah, but that's.
What do you?
Oh, sorry.
And obviously, Alexander, you've played with these. They're pretty much a staple now in Affinity going forward from here until forever. Are you just loading up on these in Affinity, or are you handpicking just a certain few? Because obviously, you know, you've got to make room for the play set of the other artifact lands as well.
Yeah. I think you need to balance. I think 5 is a good number for this, but I can see having more on a Affinity shell. But they are kind of useful for control decks because you can have the Metalcraft for Galvanic Blast, and even having a control shell using Thoughtcast is an option right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I expect Thoughtcast to be pretty much everywhere now. Any deck that can splash blue or produce blue mana. I expect a lot more decks to be able to run Galvanic Blast, like you mentioned, strictly because, you know, if they're a mid-range or late-game deck, there's no harm in running one of these into the battlefield, tap dual lands, and turn it on your Galvanic Blast, you know.
That is true.
Yep.
Well, that's sort of all of our Modern Horizons 2 cards. So I guess we can move on. Alexander, we always do one more portion, which is the Q&A, where the audience always submits some questions. We have a fair bit this time around.
Yeah, before we get into that, was there any other Modern Horizons 2 cards you wanted to go over, Alexander, or you think we covered it?
I think we did.
I think for me anyway, it was like the excitement of the cards that we got, you know, the Chatterstorms and the indestructible dual lands. It made this set feel like there was a million options for Pauper from this set, but really there's just 10, maybe 15 if you count each individual artifact land. There's just not a ton.
Yeah. And there's a lot of cool cards, but it's kind of similar to the first Modern Horizons, because we had a lot of really cool cards, but we had Archon's Astrolabe and Ephemerates as cards that stand out as really, really good. And maybe because of this new really strong cards, we don't get to play with the cool cards as much, because they're just cool. They're not very
right. It's almost that happened almost exactly the same way as Modern Horizons 1. Like, everybody was so focused on Ephemerates and Astrolabes that you almost forgot about the Savage Swipes and the fun slivers and the Mind Rakes and that sort of thing. One thing I'm really hoping from Modern Horizons 2 is that it makes Madness a competitive deck. I think that I do too. I think it's similar to what Christian was saying earlier about Reanimator decks, where they're never particularly good, but they can steal some wins away. If you're not expecting it, or the fates are looking down on you kindly, I think you can steal a league or two with them. But I'm hoping they become legit with this set.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we can go ahead and get into our questions. Our first two both come from friend of the show, Big B. The first one wants to know what fringe decks might work in the upcoming meta.
So I have to turn to the MTG Goldfish page, just real quick.
Yeah, no problem.
So
that's where most of my brewing starts.
Yeah, maybe Mono Blue Delver. It's kind of a fringe deck that can be really potent against Storm, because you have a lot of really fast mana, so have a really fast access to blue mana, so it really counts against Storm, and it can have a good matchup against just say in a better way, a kind of a fair matchup against the new Affinity. So I would say Mono Blue. So what else? Maybe Mogwarts can be a fringe deck that can combo out against Affinity and can be not as fast as Shatterstorm, but having Duress can maybe slow down the Storm deck just enough to combo itself.
Sure.
But you don't have a lot of room for fringe decks, in my opinion, because even the mid-range decks like Land Destruction, Jund, even the Ores of Pestilence, Stompy, it's really tough to see these kind of decks working on this new meta.
Yeah, I think you pretty much nailed it with Shatterstorm and Affinity being so fast and strong and explosive. It's going to be an uphill climb for a lot of these decks.
Yeah. One deck that I just thought about it was maybe Izzet Blitz.
Yep, that can be pretty fast. Fast.
And Disruptive.
Yeah.
In the early game.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to throw in counter spells to that deck, or Vapor Snags or whatever.
Well, yeah, and then Big B's next question, and I think Bandy from the Discord also asked a pretty similar question. The questions are, what does Pauper need after this set? What more could we ask for? And then Bandy asks, what are some archetypes or strategies you hope will see more support from Wizards of the Coast in the future to make them more playable?
I want more allies. I know this wasn't my question, or it wasn't directed at me, but I need more allies.
Yeah, I really like rogue decks, like allies, even Madness.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I like every time you have a good card for a bad deck. I really like this kind of additions,
Good cards for bad decks. I love that.
Yeah, This is a really good slogan.
Yeah, it is very good.
So, and I really don't like when they print something like a new a Pharisee or something like,
It just it automatically has a home in an already powerful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or a 4/4 salamander that is free.
Yeah, I think something that can be considered by the community is maybe having a fresh new start for Pauper, maybe having a set of bands that can be not only 1 and 2 cards for only 1 and 2 decks, but maybe rethink the formats and start a little bit fresh, maybe banning something like a good amount of cards, like maybe 9 or 10 cards, so something a little bit more extreme, but just to make the format go to a point zero again.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I do like that idea as well, sort of not exactly starting from scratch, but sort of rethinking what the format should be. I know I saw the question posted on Twitter. I didn't answer because I don't think I actually had a good answer for it. But it was pretty much, the question was just, what do you think Pauper should be? And I think that's a really, because it is so many things to so many people. But yeah, your idea is starting scratch, reevaluating all the current banned cards, going through the strong cards we have now, and just sort of, like you said, starting at point zero. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, so the next, I guess, not really a question, but a message comes from friend of the show, Blacksia.
Andreas?
Yeah. He wants to say hi, and that he really likes your Mogwarts Reanimator deck.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep, he seemed pretty happy with that.
Thanks a lot.
But yeah, I don't know. Oh, go ahead.
I thought about the deck, and I said when the Strixhaven was released, but the first time I got to see the deck in action was on a Hamunda stream.
Yeah, I think he was one of the first ones I saw on Twitter really talk about streaming it and tweaking the deck and actually trying to make it something viable and good. Everybody had their own takes on it, obviously, because it's such a cool deck. But yeah, he was one of the first I think I saw actually stream it.
Yeah.
And it's still strong. How do you feel about that deck currently? Is it not the new shiny toy anymore? Or do you think it's still got legs underneath it?
Might be, because you basically nowadays in Pauper you have to think: is this deck good against Affinity? Is this deck good against Storm? Maybe you have blue-black Fairies as another potent deck in the format. But I think the deck is strong. It's kind of the Exhume is kind of good because it's kind of another must counter, but so it's kind of another way to fight against counter spell, to have another very must counter card. So maybe they run out of counters. So maybe can be an option for the format. I don't think it's very competitive.
Yeah, I think that first weekend everybody was playing it. We saw a couple copies in the challenges, but since then it's just been maybe one shows up in the 5-0, deck dump every Wednesday or whatever. But
yeah, but it's a really good option for Cards Helm tournaments, for example.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, those are excellent. Like I said, they're free. You take whatever deck you want in there and pauper it up. It's a good time. I played in a few of them. The competition level is pretty high because they're all good players. Everyone in there.
Yeah, true.
There's no beginners. There's no first timers. It's all really good seasoned players, but they're just testing out what they thought they wanted to build or what they could see being good in the future. So they took it here first. So it's really high level play, but really fun, entertaining decks.
And it might be a fun deck to play on a LGS, because it's kind of good to see the reaction of, or the expression, or the facial expression when you put a Ulavax Crusher on the play. So might be fun.
Yeah, and plus you don't have to do 135 clicks. You can just show them the 2 cards and be like, "Look, I do this until I can cast this," and you're dead.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that anybody wanted to mention before we go into our outro here?
I don't think so. I just once again wanted to thank Alex for coming on. Thanks for working with our schedule. I know it kind of went back and forth for a week or so trying to figure it out, but I'm glad we all got together. This is amazing. I'm glad you get on with these new cards and semi-new cards anyway. But yeah, we can just go through where you can find Mr. Weber, his links, his social sites, that sort of thing.
Yeah, you can find Mr. Alexander Weber on YouTube at Alexander Weber MTG. On Twitch, you can find... Are you Alexander Weber MTG on Twitch as well?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, and then on Twitter, he is at Weber MTG. Really good player, really well-produced stream, very kind, as we found out.
Yep.
Just all-around great dude. Yeah. But
Yeah, I had a great time here.
Good. We had some hiccups with the chat room here, which are unusual, but yeah, I'm glad we got it figured out. I'm pretty happy to have you on. It's been something I've talked about for a while, is having you specifically on the show to interview and to talk to and stuff. And I know I asked you originally for just an interview, but then I realized these cards were coming out and it was going to be a whole thing. So I thought, why not have you on for all of it, do all of it kind of at once.
Cool.
But yeah, so that's going to do it for this episode of Common Knowledge. If you want to get in touch with Brad or I, you can find me on Twitter at JessGuyDad. Brad, where can they find you?
At Popper_B on Twitter or BradDrackV on MTGO. Alexander, did you want to put your MTGO nickname out there, or would you rather let people find it on their own?
Yeah, I think let be a little mysterious right here.
Okay.
If you needed to find both Brad and I in the same place, you can always reach out to us on Twitter or shoot us an email at commonknowledgemtg@gmail.com. If you have any questions on the Popper format, MTGO, or anything else, you can email us, leave a comment down below, or you can pop into Mr. Weber's stream. I'm sure he'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Absolutely.
Thanks again.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks again to our sponsor, PureMTGO.com, as well as the Constructive Criticism Network, for letting us be a part of it. And last, but certainly not least, thank you for listening. Take very good care of each other.
Never stop brewing.